Well, the G20 is all wrapped up, and between climate change talk and Mr. Putin's early departure, we definitely saw a lot of headlines. Today, though, I'm going to be talking about that Australia-China free trade agreement. My guest today is Nikki Hutley of UBIS. Nikki Hutley, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us today. Much appreciated.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so firstly, the Australian nut industry and lobster exporters are just two sectors which seem to be very enthusiastic about this Australia-China free trade agreement. Can you firstly walk us through the developments of this deal and also what it could mean for Australian commerce?
Well, the developments have been a very long time coming. As some people may be aware, it started back in 2005 when the first feasibility study was done to say, was a free trade agreement even a good idea in theory? And since then, it's taken a long time. This is a very hard bargaining negotiation where both sides want to gain a lot, but not give up a lot to get those gains. But we found that the Australian agricultural sector is one where the gains will benefit both sides. So China has a very large and growing population, of course, with growing incomes. They want more food. They're very picky about the food that they have. There is a very strong demand for nuts, for example. There's also, because it's seen as a high health food. Similarly with rock lobster, abalone, those sorts of seafood, very common to as a prestige food. For Australia, getting access to the market is all about playing on a level playing field. If we are competing against other countries that can provide those goods without the tariffs, as many countries do because they've already negotiated a free trade agreement, then they're at an advantage to us. They're getting cheaper goods into the markets, and the Chinese consumer is very price sensitive.
Now, one of the concerns that Australian businesses have voiced is that this agreement could in fact favour Chinese companies. Are these concerns valid in your view, particularly when we're already hearing reports of China targeting specific sectors that it would wish to inject its companies into?
Look, I think we've seen in recent years that we've got massive infrastructure investment, not just from China but from elsewhere, where yes, there is some labour that comes in when there is an absence of skills, but that is still very much the case, is that they will have to prove, if they want to bring in labour, that there is an absence of skills, and they will have to be paid at the same rates that Australians are paid. So really, I think it's probably a little bit of scaremongering. I think where we do have skill shortages, it will be of a benefit to everybody to bring in that talent. Otherwise, the jobs will go locally.
Now, this deal is expected to reduce reliance on resources, but could this agreement perhaps go some way to explaining Mr. Abbott standing up for coal this weekend at the G20?
It's a curious one, because in actual fact this is seen as an opportunity for Australia to get into China outside of the resources sector. It's very much a focus of getting better access for our services, for education, financial services. We've heard about healthcare and the agricultural sector as well. So it doesn't really ring true when he is standing up for coal, particularly when we're seeing China and the US now standing up for climate change and carbon mitigation.
Now, lastly, Nikki, we've spoken a lot in terms of a business platform, really, regarding this deal, but what could it actually mean for Australian consumers?
Look, as with everything in economics, there's positives and negatives. We can see that some of the goods that will have greater access to Australia mean that we'll have lower prices. But similarly, let's take the rock lobsters, for example. If the market opens up more in China, there may actually be reduced supply in the domestic market, at least for a time, until production can be stepped up. And that might, in fact, mean higher prices in some instances. So it's very much a industry by industry case. It certainly means that there will be more opportunities for us as Australians to get overseas, to get better export earnings. That helps incomes across the board. So there are positives from it, but also on a case-by-case basis there can be negatives, at least in the short term.
Nikki, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us about rock lobsters on this Monday. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie.
It's certainly going to be interesting to see how the relationship between these two nations works out. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.